Hello boys and girls, the Mad Hat here, and welcome to our very first episode of the Community Build Guide. The idea for the series is to give you basic build orders for fun and off-meta playstyles, so you can test them out yourself. These are not 100% optimized and tested yet, but they are more intended for you to get out there and have some fun with the game. Go out and refine these diamonds in the rough to become viable builds in the future. Kicking it off is Nighthunter321 with his Ravager Rush. This is for all you folks out there who always wanted to go full Saruman on their enemies. I'll be covering the opener to the strategy, its late game potential, as well as my patch predictions and how I feel the build will perform in the future. On to the meat of things. You will start with 6 wood and double food in the main. The first outpost will have double wood as well as the second one. And on the third outpost you will put down double food. Keep in mind, Nighthunter's build as well as his gameplay in the back is only meant as a baseline, so you will have to go out there and adjust it to the map and your opponent. Obviously, contrary to most popular orc builds, this is an economy opener, so in the beginning you will have to really utilize your cultist or your goblin shaman to put pressure on your enemy early game and contest those flags for outposts. Once the first 3 outposts are up and running, you can put down your war pit anywhere you like. The important bit is just you only have to build it. You don't even need a worker in it, because building it will unlock the walk riders. You do not need anything else for the moment. On your 4th outpost you can get double wood, then on the 5th outpost double food, 6th outpost double stone, and 7th outpost double food again. This is the time where you can start adjusting a little bit, so you can also start with 1 food, 1 wood, or just go double food. Depending on the situation, you have to start adjusting a little bit depending on the needs and the aggressiveness of your opponent. Around the 6.5 minute marks, you should have 7 to 9 walks to help you creep and harass, and you just keep adding walks and gobbles depending on your need. As soon as you hit the 20 stone, you will level up your main base to level 2. At this point you need to readjust your economy, so if you start to float wood, for example, you can remove workers from your main base and start adding hunting cabins there instead. So you'd either just pull a couple workers off the project, or you delete lumber mills altogether and just add hunting cabins. And the tier 2 should hit roughly at the 9.5 minute mark and have some iron outposts prepared and upgraded, so you can put down iron mines immediately. Roughly 4 iron mines should be enough to deplete the stone that you have accumulated so far. You do keep adding wargs and goblins, and you upgrade your sectors as soon as you're floating resources or you hit the maximum population cap. At minute 10.5 you start to build the blood forge and the normal forge, and you add 2 stone in your main and redirect the hunters to stone, depending if you're already out in the main, or you can also build them somewhere else. As soon as you can afford it, put a worker into your war pit and upgrade the Ravager and Shaman technology. With your first 15 iron, upgrade the walk upgrade in the blood forge to turn them into a decent budget hunter option, and start building the economy upgrades in the forge. Roughly from the minute 13.5 you just produce Ravagers to support your army. And that is the opener. That seems to be the fastest timing Nighthunter has been able to pull it off so far. So why rush Ravager even in the first place? Despite from being really cool. They do have, as you can see here, 110 strike damage on a 0.67 attack speed. That means they have 3 attacks every 2 seconds, which makes them one of the highest DPS units in the game. Granted, they are very squishy with their 1000 HP and 0 resistances from the start, but with all Bloodforge upgrades, as well as the attack upgrades, they do go up to 125 strike damage, as well as 15 resistances on each stat. And as we can see here, they are very good answers to things like Spike Flingers, since due to their high model size, the strength of the Spike Flingers, which is the insane AoE that basically can delete 6-7 goblins at once, can only hit 1 or maybe 2 Ravagers at a time, depending on spacing. And that brings us to part 2. What can we actually do with these bad boys in the late game? So here I have set up a match against an easy AI, just to test out some things. First, let's look at their speed. After the Bloodforge speed upgrade, they can run at the same speed as a scout unit, which can make them excellent flankers if you can spare the micro, and depending on the map, if you can actually get on a backline. But why stop there? Our boys the orcs have the Battle Rage spell that you can research in the Shaman hut. It applies hasten to allied creatures in an area for 10 seconds. It's a small area, so a couple of boys, but it gives a 50% movement speed increase for 10 seconds. So that looks like this. It's a bit hard to use, a long cast time, so it does need a buff, but can be situationally useful. Go and try it. On top of this, we can add Zarek's Blessing. That's the Titan AoE buff that gives you 100% attack speed and an additional 50% movement speed for 20 seconds all around your Titan. Only at the end of these 20 seconds will the 200 pure damage applied to your creature. So if your unit is below 200 points at that point, it will die. But up until then, you have this insane buff that stacks with everything else. And that's where the good stuff is hiding here. But wait, there's more. If we add on top of that Zarek's Champion, which at level 2 and with max brute force gives you 100% attack damage all around the occultist for 20 seconds, you end up with a 250 strike damage, 3 attacks per second Ravager, which is zipping around faster than a Ferrari. You get an absolutely insane unit. And just in case you're wondering, yes, this buff works on a Titan. Keep in mind, these are of course test conditions, so stacking all of that in a real game is quite a challenge. But go out there and try it. It does work on other units, of course, like you can buff trolls, wyvern, hunters, just whatever playstyle you prefer. Use these buffs, they're extremely strong. Go out there and crush your enemies. And that brings us to the last part, the patch predictions. So, as you can see here, I've brought up the newest patch as it is on the 20th of December 2020. So this is not the final patch, it is a patch preview, but it gives us a good baseline of what we can expect going forwards. So things can change, take it with a grain of salt, but we'll go over them concerning the orcs and see how that would affect strategy. So, for all factions, the increased mining speed by 10%, well, that's good. We'll buff orcs, we'll buff basically everybody except the trolls. We'll make it easier to get those Ravagers out, makes them a little bit cheaper, as well as the basic upgrades for them will come out faster there. So the reduced research time from tier 1 to tier 2 is shaved down by a third for all factions. That's especially good for orcs since they usually transition relatively early. So it's gonna be even earlier. So that's another buff, but basically for everybody. As well as, this is the big one, the adjusted build and repair efficiency. So the way it worked before, to my understanding, is when you hit the repair on a building, you got 1% of HP per second back. Which meant on an orc outpost, level 1 was 5 HP per second, since they started with 5000 HP. And on a tier 2, it was 10 per second, since it had 10,000 HP. Now, each outpost will start healing at 25 HP per second. That's 5 times the amount than it was before. So that makes all outposts generally across the board a lot tankier. And the way I understand this, it's also for all the buildings in that sector as well, but also for each upgrade to an outpost. So if you have a tier 2 outpost, that's going to be 50 HP per second. So sieging without siege damage is going to be a much bigger challenge now. And for capitals, those are basically doubled, 50 HP per second and then 50 HP per tier. So that is huge. That'll make these early outpost grabs very important, and since orcs still can get them fairly cheap, if you grab them early, you're gonna be a hell of a nuisance to get rid of again. Then, moving forward, the production time of units in the main is now halved. So basically that means normal speed for your production in the main. All races produce at half the speed from their main, and now orcs will get that reduced to normal speed since they can't produce barracks and only produce from outposts. So the capital will now be treated as a normal outpost, which makes a lot more goblins if you don't have as many outposts. That's double the amount of goblins you can get from your capital. So that's a very strong buff. So here are some nerfs, because the orc economy is very, very good in the current state. So generally just cost increases by roughly 2 wood. Yeah, the farm will cost now 7 wood and 2 stone. As well as, here's a clincher, the war pit doesn't cost 20 wood anymore. It's reduced to 5 wood, but it also now needs 10 stone. Also building 5 seconds faster. So you have to balance your economy a little bit different. So probably have to get like 1 stone cutter out a little bit earlier. And that should be it. As well as it's going to be a bit tankier. And the unit upgrades will cost 5 wood, which isn't a huge deal, but can come in a little bit bigger. So, and Occultist does get nerfed a bit, which makes him a little bit less potent against the flags in the early game, but it also scales now with spell power, so it's not a complete half damage nerf. As long as you have some brute force, you will still do a considerable amount of damage. As well as a lovely totem buff here from the shaman. So overall, this is, generally speaking, I would say a buff for the strategy. We're gonna have to see how the economy plays out, but since it's an economy-based opener with the buffs to outposts here, which makes them a lot more tankier, as long as you can grab the vital bonds that you need in the beginning, you should actually be able to play economy orcs a lot more easy now. But we'll have to see how it plays out. So those are my predictions. I hope you enjoyed this video. You're all adults. You can like, subscribe, and that thing on your own accord, but it's definitely appreciated, especially if you let me know if you want to see more of these kind of builds in the future. This has been my biggest video yet in terms of editing and just general work that I've put into it. So I hope you appreciate it, and I hope you have some fun with this. I bid you a good day, and I'll see you around next time. Bye bye.